Hi, my dear audience. My name is Sasser, and today I'm here to tell you about a short story review. The title of the story is Rappaccini's Daughter, which is a Gothic short story, and its author is Nathaniel Hawthorne. First of all, it is good to know a little bit about the author, and therefore we proceed mentioning some relevant information about his life, such as the following. Nathaniel Hawthorne was an American author born the 4th of July, 1804 in Salem, Massachusetts. Throughout his life, he was known as a leading writer, master of the allegorical and symbolic tale, who specialized in novels and short stories. It is worth mentioning that many of his stories were set in Puritan New England because this is where his ancestors lived. He studied and got graduated from Wheaton College in 1825, and for most of his life he had found his talent in short stories and has been considered as one of the greatest fiction writers in American literature. In fact, he is best known for his greatest booms, The Scarlet Letter and The House of the Seven Gables. He married Sophia Peabody in 1842 and had three beautiful children. Through the end of his days, Hawthorne became seriously ill and weak, and sadly he passed away in Franklin Pierce's home in New Hampshire on May 19, 1864. In this story, Hawthorne reveals the full spectrum of human morality. In here, he shows us certain elements such as the difference between good and evil, love and doubt, and knowledge and sin. This story is compared to Adam and Eve's story when they were at the paradise. The story is set in Padua, southern Italy, and it takes place in an old palace, and the majority of it is seen in Rappaccini's garden in a distant and unspecified past in the 19th century. This story has a suspenseful tone. It is dark and surreal, and the narrator is in third person point of view, due that he is not part of the story but knows and tells about the facts and the details of it, and refers to its characters as he, she, and they. The main characters of this story are Giovanni Visconti, Giacomo Rappaccini, Beatrice, and Professor Pietro Baglioni. We can determine their description by highlighting the following elements. Giovanni Visconti becomes Beatrice Rappaccini's lover through the development of the story. He is mesmerized for her beauty. He is young and curious. Giacomo Rappaccini, on the other hand, was tall and thin. His face had turned to yellow and his eyes were sharp and black. He was a dominant being, an oppressor that captivated his daughter all her life in order that she look forward his plans. And besides, he poisoned her in order that she could be the most powerful woman that has ever existed. He didn't want anyone to damage his daughter. Beatrice was Rappaccini's daughter in the story. She was a beautiful lady that had thick curly hair and dark hair. Her cheeks were pink and her eyes were large and black. She was innocent, she was sweet. She seemed healthy and full of life, but in the inside she was poisoned. She is the representation of purity and corruption. Professor Pietro Baglioni is a professor at Padua University. He knows about Rappaccini. He knows Rappaccini very well, and it is the one that provides Giovanni with the antidote so he can save Beatrice. It all starts when Giovanni Visconti was a young student and he arrived from Naples, southern Italy. to study medicine at the University of Padua. His first move, once he arrived to his target place, was to rent a small room in an ancient and dark palace that belonged to a noble family. That now, its rooms were available to the students of the previous mentioned university. It is worth mentioning that his room owned a small window which was at his disposal in order to appreciate the beautiful garden that was on the other side. That beautiful garden contained so many beautiful plants and flowers that Giovanni would sit frequently by his window in order to observe it. In fact, he already had a favorite plant that was near his neighbor's house. It was in a white marble vase covered with big purple flowers. This beautiful garden belonged to a famous doctor called Giacomo Rappaccini, and it was said by people that this doctor used his plants to make different untypical kinds of medicines. Rappaccini lived in a small brown house with his beautiful daughter Beatrice, who calls Giovanni's attention for her beauty and simplicity. One of those usual days when Giovanni used to look through his window, he got to see Rappaccini working in his garden, but totally covered. He was unrecognizable. He looked so mysterious, wearing a black cape and thick gloves. He was there, examining his plants, but Giovanni could see that he avoided the direct contact with the flowers or the plants without knowing that it was because they were poisonous. Once he approached to the plant with the purple flowers. Instead, he decided to call his daughter Beatrice due that she was resistant to the poisons. She was raised to take care of these flowers, and during all her process, she has become poisonous to others as well. Giovanni is so curious about this neighbor that several weeks later he pays a visit to Pietro Baglioni, a friend of his father's and a medicine teacher of the university. He takes a moment of his time and asks him about this famous Rappaccini, to which the teacher answers that he is a great scientist, but a dangerous man, because he cared more about science than he did about people. He used his plants to create poisons in order to cure sickness, but some people have died because of them, and he would sacrifice any life, even his own, for one of his experiments. The teacher also told him about Beatrice. He told him that she never left his father's house and that few men have ever seen her. Once Giovanni left the teacher's house, he headed up to a flower shop and bought some fresh flowers. He sat by the window and saw his beautiful Beatrice going to the garden and walking among the plants. He observed her, and while observing her, he could notice that she talked to the beautiful purple plant, which glowed more and more. He could hear her asking for breath, because the ordinary air made her weak. As soon as she took the flower, he could notice that a tiny lizard died, which was something she didn't pay too much attention to. But once she saw a beautiful butterfly that approached her and die as well, she became very sad. That's the instance when she looks up to Giovanni's window and he throws to her flowers, the flowers that he had bought in order that she can wear them. Once she picks them up from the floor, she runs home shyly and notices that the flowers started to become brown in her hands as well, as it happened with the lizard and the butterfly that they died. Giovanni loses contact with Beatrice for a while due that he was impressed with her beauty and also because he couldn't stop thinking about what he saw that day when the little lizard and the butterfly died once they approached her. One day, while Giovanni was heading home after class, casually he met Professor Baglioni on the street, and the teacher told Giovanni that he looked different. His appearance didn't look the same as the last time they saw each other, and in fact, this time Giovanni looked paler. His face looked white. His eyes seemed to burn with fever, and he became thinner. There, the same man, the same man that Giovanni had seen in the garden the other day, walked around them and looked at Giovanni with a great interest. Fact that called the teacher's attention and therefore tells him to be aware because this man could be planning something to get Giovanni as one of his college experiments. Giovanni immediately runs home, feeling frightened and confused as well, and finds Signora Elisabetta, who is the lady who rented him the room where he is staying, and she decides to give him a clue of how to access to Rappaccini's house, or let's say garden, due that she knew that he was in love with Beatrice, which is Rappaccini's daughter. And this is the perfect moment for Giovanni to see what is the mysterious that there is in the garden. Giovanni found the secret entrance that would allow him to access his neighbor's garden, and he proceeded going in. Once he was in, he noticed that the plants resembled all wild and odd, and realized that they were victim of Rappaccini's experiments. In that instance, Beatrice goes to the garden and meets Giovanni. She could appreciate that he liked flowers and then smiled. Suddenly, while they were talking, a perfume hovered through the air and it came from her. But Giovanni wasn't sure if it really came from her breath, or if it was a perfume that was around, like that it came from the plants. It was a delightful one, actually. As long as they talked, they stepped where the plant with the purple flowers was. There, he finally realized that the plant had the same smell he experienced while they were talking a while ago or a moment ago, and confirmed that it really came from Beatrice's breath. The following day, Giovanni wakes up with a great pain and feels that one of his hands is on fire. That was actually the hand that Beatrice grabbed when he was about to touch the plant that owned the purple flowers. They continued seeing each other a couple of times in the garden, approximately for a month, right? Without any kind of physical contact. Weeks later, Professor Vaglioni visits Giovanni and warns him again about visiting these dangerous people. He proceeds explaining him that Beatrice has a condition and a background, and also he proceeds giving him a bottle of medicine that would save him and possible save his beautiful Beatrice as well. Giovanni was so impressed by his beautiful Beatrice that he couldn't believe what was told about her. For him, she was sweet and innocent, incapable of harming. It was almost time of meeting his beloved Beatrice. He got dressed and looked gorgeous, but suddenly he started feeling strange and to look different as well. Even the flowers that he had turned brown and the insects died when he blew a breath of air at them. Such was the case of a spider. Beatrice called him from the garden and he approached her, calling her a monster because he was starting to get infected and poisoned. Beatrice urged Giovanni to look past the poisonous exterior and see her pure innocence, and also creating great feelings of doubt and confusion. That's what she caused for him. At the end, Giovanni's anger decreases to sadness, and there he remembers the antidote that Professor Baglioni gave him and decides to give to Beatrice a taste of it in order that she could be saved and in order to free her from her father's cruel experiment. In that moment, Rappaccini meets these two young people and excitedly welcomes the love between these two creatures. He was so excited because Giovanni got finally captured. He even thought that now Giovanni was within his daughter's reach and that they were the perfect match. Due that both finally were in the same condition. Unfortunately, Beatrice doesn't resist the antidote and dies. She was so full of her father's poison that the medicine ended killing her. The moral conveyed through this fantasy is that we should never step beyond our limits and that every step we give must be in the favor of human welfare. In fact, we should have our goals specified and traced, but without getting to the point of becoming frustrated with them. I think that everything has a time, and if we work hard for it without the necessity of damaging others and also in either damaging what surrounds us, if it's meant to be, for sure it would be. I would rate this book with a 5. I think that this story was a great illustration of what happens when we force something until getting to the point of saturating it. In fact, insisting to a grade of excessiveness can lead to failure, and everything does in excess harms, even though if it is not our intention, which was the case of this doctor who reached the borders of madness for his experiments. I really hope that you have enjoyed this short story. Thank you so much for listening to me, and thank you so much for your attention. I hope you have a wonderful day.